Welcome back all you wonderful people to another Grounded Tech video. I'm Dan. Today we are talking about this, the Galaxy A13, which is apparently the sequel to the best-selling Android phone of 2021. So of course I was quite interested in giving this phone a go and seeing what most people tend to use, because the fact is most people buy budget and mid-range phones. And I think with financial constraints at the moment, with inflation and everything else, more people are going to be looking at budget handsets. So let's take a look at the Samsung Galaxy A13 and see whether it really is value for money at its current retail price of £139. I think there's a lot of hardware on this phone that's pretty great. So for instance, the screen. Now we've got a 6.6-inch 1080p IPS LCD display with Gorilla Glass 5. I actually quite like LCD displays. I think they look really good. And I think a good quality LCD display is definitely better than having a poor OLED. It gives natural colors, there's plenty of detail. I can't see any reason why anybody would be dissatisfied with this screen. It looks great. The only thing I will say is that there is no ambient light sensor. So my recommendation would be to just set the brightness. It's around 50% to 100% depending on your preference, and just kind of leave it there, because yeah, no ambient light sensor does make a pretty big difference. And I think it uses the front camera to sort of try and adjust, but it doesn't really work very well. We also have micro SD card support, and one of my favorite features, a headphone jack. And for biometrics, we have the tried and tested fingerprint sensor in the power button. Big thumbs up from me. In addition to the fingerprint reader, you do have face unlock, but of course it's just using the camera, so it's only a 2D image, which is not very secure, so it's not something I'd recommend using to most people, but I know a lot of people like to have it, so it's there. Got a whopping huge 5000 mAh battery. With that big battery, you can get very good battery life out of this phone. You can get up to 2 days on this phone quite easily, actually, and that also comes down to the processor in this phone, which we're going to get onto shortly. Worth noting as well that you don't get a charger in the box, and there's only 50-watt charging, so you literally get the phone and a SIM unlock tool. And then we have the camera setup. So 50 megapixel main sensor, and it looks pretty good. The output is pretty good. I put a few photos up on Twitter in comparison to the A33, which I'm also testing at the moment, and most people actually chose the A13 shot over the A33 shot because it gave more of a natural tone. I felt like it was a little bit too anemic in the output, but yeah, it was quite interesting to see the results from that. So you can get good images out of that main sensor. The macro is usable as well, but it's not something you're going to use very often. The ultra wide is fairly terrible, but you know, it's a budget phone. I would much prefer that companies like Samsung and others, instead of adding multiple cameras to these budget phones, they just put all of the available funds into giving us a main sensor that was better. Worth noting as well that the front-facing camera is actually fairly okay. Fairly detailed output, but of course nothing special as you would expect with a selfie camera on a budget phone. I apologise for my face. All of this is wrapped up in a plastic body that's very light, durable, comfortable, but very slippery, so a case would be recommended with this phone, but it should still be able to take a few tumbles and shocks along the way. Samsung also say that you will get 2 major software updates with this phone, and 4 years of security updates. And it's worth noting that this phone does actually launch with Android 12 as well. So you've got Android 12 there, you'll get 13 and 14. Now, you're probably thinking this sounds really, really good for a budget phone. And to be honest, it does. There's a lot of nice features in there. And actually, the hardware is pretty good. But now we get to the issue with this phone. And, oh, it's a big issue. It's a big issue. It's really disappointing. We have extremely poor performance. Now, we've got an Exynos 850 in there. I know a lot of people will be like, oh my god, Exynos. A lot of people watching this video looking at budget phones won't even know what an Exynos is. I found that while I was using the phone, just in general use, and I'm talking just switching between apps, general scrolling, even opening the phone, especially once it's been idle for a little while, if you're doing anything while, say, apps are updating, the phone stutters, it freezes, it barely moves, especially when I say you know, apps updating in the background and then you try and do something, it comes to a standstill. Like, the performance is dire. And I'm actually surprised that there's phones in 2022 that are being sold in this state. Now, the last time I tried a budget Android phone was probably around 7-8 years ago. And I couldn't recommend them to anybody because they were a pretty horrible experience. What I used to recommend was a Lumia 520 to a lot of people, or even a 630, 640, because those phones were very, very smooth, and they did the basics extremely well. Unfortunately, those phones are still better than what this offers in terms of performance, because it makes you want to not use the phone. It is that bad. I know a lot of people say, well, it is a budget phone, you shouldn't be expecting performance. I expect the phone to be able to perform, to be able to complete basic tasks fairly easily. Like, I feel like the performance is so bad with this phone that you would struggle to get into the phone and do something quickly if you felt like you needed to. If you needed to make a call quickly, the phone takes so long to respond. I mean, sometimes when I go to the phone when it's been idle, I'll grab it, put my thumb on the fingerprint reader, and you get the vibration straight. The fingerprint reader is lightning fast. It's fantastic. But then the phone can take up to 5 seconds to wake up. It is really bad. And that's the same for when you're trying to launch the camera as well. You launch the camera, double click on the power button, it takes an age to actually launch into it. And it can take a little while for the camera to open, even when you're using the phone to begin with. So I don't know how Samsung really get away with launching. I mean, I really don't know how Samsung can sell a phone like this in 2022 and get away with it. I'm surprised if the A12 is as bad in performance as this phone that it became the best-selling Android phone of last year. It's quite astonishing, to be honest. And yeah, I feel like there has to be better options out there in terms of performance. Sure, with Samsung you're getting long support, you're getting that 2 years OS and 4 years of security updates. But legitimately, I don't know how anybody would be able to put up with this phone for that long. Unless you genuinely don't care about performance. I say performance. Unless you genuinely don't care about being able to do things in a fairly reasonably quick manner. Because of the poor performance as well, don't expect to do much in the way of gaming. You can do things like Candy Crush. You may even get away with something like Asphalt, but when I was trying to play Pokemon Go, I was probably getting around 10 to 15 FPS playing that game. Impossible to play, really. So yeah, don't expect to do much gaming on this. It's a confusing phone for me. I like so much about this phone. I really do like so much about this phone. But I feel like Samsung have just hindered it so much with this Exynos that it's almost unusable. I couldn't use this as a day-to-day phone. I really couldn't. I know people buying these kinds of phones are very casual users in a lot of cases, but even as a casual user, it doesn't cut it. It doesn't cut it. It really doesn't. And I know I have to get into a different mindset for this because I'm used to using a flagship phone. It's a very different experience to a budget phone. But I've tried other phones, even in the mid-range, that still function very, very well and very quickly when doing the basic tasks. And the basic tasks you expect to be done fairly quickly. And this phone doesn't do that. So I'm going to do a full review on this, and we're going to get into things a little bit more. But for now, my impressions on this aren't fantastic. There's definitely some other good options out there. Xiaomi makes some great budget handsets. I'd like to hear your thoughts, people. I really would. What do you think to this phone? Do you think Samsung have dropped the ball a little bit? Is it time that they really started to put some effort in with the A series? Let me know in the comments. Just want to say a big thank you to Direct Mobiles UK for the A13 loaner, and if you would like to check out deals on this phone and more, you can do so at the link below in the description. But thank you all for watching. I really appreciate you. Stay grounded. We'll see you soon.